One is Sean Smith from Black Push. I've been devastated by what I've seen coming out of the border with our Haitian community. People being beaten, people riding on horses, people who are trying to get to safety for them and their family and their kids being turned around, or just being deported back to a country that is not even able to take them in right now. I am looking to make a difference in this area, and I need your help. Go to our website now, www.blackpush.org, and where you can make a donation and sign our petition, and where we stand together and say to America that this is not okay, this is not right, and we won't tolerate it. This is not the America I know. This is not the country in which we are built upon and founded upon. We have a lot of work to do, and we have to do it together. So join us in this journey as we support our Haitian brothers and sisters. That human rights is very valuable, and we have to stand together. We have to work together, and let's do this. Let's support our brothers and sisters. Go to our website now at www.blackpush.org.
I like that.
Hey everyone, so we are back. Today is what day? I always forget the date, James. Where are we on? The 29th? 29th. So we're back. We want to continue to remind everybody about our Haitian Relief Fund that we're trying to do. And this is something that James, I'm not going to let go of until the spirit leads me to let it go. But I'm going to keep talking about what's going on at the border with Haitians until some change comes. And I don't see much change coming right now in that direction.
Yeah, well, I agree. It shouldn't be swept under the rug so quickly. Unfortunately, as when you're not getting a lot of media press on it, people have a tendency to forget and let it go because they don't see it. It has to stay in the forefront. If it gets pushed to the back burner, it's probably going to disappear, or people are not going to be paying attention, and it's going to be on to the next thing.
Yeah, and that's how I think it is right now. Like, it's so much. Like, one of the things, I'm not even gonna lie, from this perspective, one of the things I am trying not to do is to, I'm trying not to get. It's just so much going on. The world is crazy right now. It's on fire, but we want to continue to remember what's going on in Haiti as a country, but what's going on across the border too with Haitians and them being deported. It seems like everything has kind of calmed down a little bit, but we need to make sure that we keep the attention on it. And maybe we need to go down to the border ourselves and see it for ourselves.
Yeah, perhaps.
Ryan can drive us.
Yeah, well, the thing is,
to the border?
To the border and go see what's in Texas. They might get us mixed up with someone. The thing is, for me, man, like you say, it's starting to dissipate. We saw everything the first time around, but I didn't hear much more outside of that. So I'm really kind of makes you wonder where things are. Just how much, and to have the Director of Homeland Security speak on it and say the things that he said, which really sounded quite negative when you are looking at the government, because he's representing the American government, and as a stance, that was the stance he took when he said those words. And, he's representing the country at that point when he says that. But it sounded real personal.
Yeah.
Like it was almost his personal opinion.
And the fact of the matter is that he's Hispanic. So you would think that with everything that's going on with immigration and other races as well, just not Haitian people. I mean, there's people who are Hispanic who are having issues with the immigration system. We remember like 2 years ago, they were locking the kids up in cages, right?
That's right.
You would think there would be some kind of like what I'm telling you, what discourages me the most is that people are not able to look outside themselves and see themselves in other people. You know what I'm saying? And I think that as a nation, like as a people, not even as a nation, as a world, if we can at some point, like, and what I'm learning to do, and this is all honesty, and this is me just being blatant, transparent, right? I'm learning to not put so much energy into people's negativity, right? So when people are upset, I ain't gonna say no names, but when people are upset, I'm learning not to invest so much of my positivity into the negativity, right? Why? Because one of the things that helped me do that is I try to step out of myself and say, like, what are they going through? And if I was in that situation, how would I feel if I was treated the same way in that situation, right? And I don't think that enough people are actually trying to look at what's going on with other people outside of themselves. You know what I'm saying? Just because it's not happening to you, it's happening to somebody. Like, the reason why I can speak up about people being evicted, right, is that first I've been to that place where I have been evicted before, right? But at the same time, every single time I hear a story about somebody being evicted, I try to step myself out of the fact that, okay, everything's good in your household right now. But what if that was you? How would you want somebody to react? Would you want somebody to stand up for you in a certain kind of way? Would you want somebody to go down? You know what I'm saying? How would you want somebody else to deal with it? And that's one of the things that I'm really learning to do and I'm praying that God gives me the guidance to just do that more, and not just from a black perspective or a white perspective, but from a human perspective. Like, everybody I come in contact with, like, if a person's having a bad day, find out why they're having a bad day, right? Find out what triggered them that day, and ask yourself, if you were in that same situation, would you react the same way they're reacting? You know, like, how could I be upset with somebody who is grieving the loss of their parent if I don't even know that they're grieving the loss of their parent? But then, like, I think we've been preaching this for a while. I've been telling everybody, like, even when a person dies, right? We was talking about this with my sister, with that when people die, people have a habit of saying to you, like, oh, I know how you feel, or, oh, I've been there, right? But you're able to relate to it differently. Like, you're able to relate to the fact of how it feels to lose a child to murder, right? Because your son was murdered.
That is correct.
And for me, in order for me to be able to grieve on your level, right, I would have to attach it to something personal to me. So, like, when I hear people, family members died, I think about how I felt when my grandmother died. I think about how I felt when my uncle died. Think about how I felt when one of my aunties who just recently died, right? And it allows me to actually be really sentimental towards their what they have going on, because of the fact that I can relate that to when it came across my own life, even though it wasn't in the same way. But when it came across my own life, that's how I felt, right? I remember when my grandmother was dying, James, and I think you remember this. When people called me, it was like, hey, how you doing? Holding up? I mean, I'm going to pray with you. I told people straight up, I don't want to hear no verses. I don't much want to hear you praying for me right now on the phone. I just need you to pray for me, right? You ain't got to do it with me on the phone. You ain't got to give me no verses. I know them all. Just pray for me, right? And now it's been a place to where, like, when people recently, even in ministry, as I've watched people who have passed away, I've been able to take a step back and be like, you know what? As spiritual as they may be, they don't need to be beat up with verses right now. They don't need me to read to them Matthew 5, where the Bible says, blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted, right? They don't need to hear that right now. All they probably need to hear me say is that, hey, I love you and I'm praying with you and for you, you know? And I don't know, we got to, I don't know, we have to get to a place where we stop looking at just ourselves in our own mirror, and we try to see things from other people's perspective and what's going on in other people's life. Because if not, I think that we'll never really hear each other or understand each other.
I agree with that. And looking from the outside back in, as opposed to looking from where your position is currently. It's a lot easier. We can say that we know and understand, but unless I have both my mothers, so I can't understand someone's position who has lost their mother. I haven't lost mine. I can't say I've lost my dad, but even with that, if you are a person who is estranged from a parent, both your parents, grandparents, auntie, or whoever, but you knew them, but you didn't know them. Right. You didn't have that kind of relationship with them. It's difficult for you to try to understand their position, simply because that's my mom, my dad, my grandma, my grandparents, my cousin, my child, but I didn't really have a relationship with them. I didn't grow up with, say for instance, a cousin that I knew of, but I didn't know.
Right.
I'm not going to feel the same. I'm going to be sad that I lost a family member, but the ones who were closest to him might feel a different way towards him. So I think a lot of it depends on the relationship that the individual has.
But see, this is where I get what you're saying, and that's how we are designed, right? Mm-hmm. We're designed because, like, you ever heard those saying, like, nothing becomes real to you until it rolls down your street, right? And that's that's who we are as people. Yes. For me, and I'm just speaking for me, I can't speak for everybody. For me, there's a verse in the Bible where Paul says that in order to gain one, I have to become a sacrifice to all in order to gain one, right? Mm-hmm. And what he's simply saying is that, like, he says when a person is grieving, you grieve with them, right? And I think what happens so many times is that people are tired of feeling fakeness, if that makes sense, right?
Yes.
Feeling like somebody standing on TV and be like, oh, I understand how the George family, Floyd family feels, but you don't feel that in what they say. You're not seeing that in their actions, right? And for me, what causes me to humble myself and go back and actually try to feel what they're feeling is I use the thing that I can relate to the closest to that, right? I can't relate to losing a mom, but I can relate to losing somebody who raised me all my life, right?
Yes.
And that emotion is something that I took when I've done eulogies recently. I mean, it's been different for me. And I think even you've said, like, even my preaching style has kind of changed. Like, it's been different for me. Even when I preach funerals now, when I go in there, I may not have been emotionally attached to the person, but I understand the feeling of losing somebody who you love dearly, who you really, really love.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that, we talk about John 3:16 so much, and people quote that verse so much. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whomsoever believe in him shall not perish. If we can relate the feeling of losing the person closest to you and feeling like there was nothing that you can do to help that person, or that person had done nothing wrong to be in the situation they were in, then we can somewhat, and I'm not saying we'll be able to see that, but we can somewhat see how God felt about that moment, right? You know what I'm saying? Because that was his child. That was his son, irregardless of and it was, the Bible says it was his only begotten son. You know what I'm saying? So imagine, like, the feeling of sacrificing your son for people who don't even like you, for people who ain't even trying to get to know you, and you're sacrificing him to bring you back into a relationship with people who don't even like you.
Right.
And I don't think people really, I don't think we really take the time. Like, we read that verse so much, we're like, oh yeah, God so loved me that he gave his only begotten son for me, just for me, right? Mm-hmm. But to understand the sacrifice, the emotions, the pain that went into that, and to understand, like, every single time, like, I was always reminded, and I tell people all the time, like, every single time we do something wrong, it's like we putting Jesus back on the cross again. And imagine how God has to feel to, like, be like, oh my God, like, that one time wasn't enough for them, right? Sean, that one time wasn't enough for Sean. And I'm speaking for myself. And I think that when I was locked up, one of the verses that they made us learn Romans chapter 6. And they made us memorize it, like, per verbatim, right? In Romans chapter 6, Paul asks the question. He says, what should we say then? He said, what should we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. How shall we who are dead to sin live any longer therein, right? Mm-hmm. And it was basically what he was saying is, like, do we continue to sin, or do we continue to live life recklessly because we know that we have grace that backs us up? No, we don't, right? How should we who are dead to sin, meaning that we no longer are bound by sin, continue to stay in something that we're no longer bound by? Like, we have freedom to get out of that. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other night, like on Monday night, I went to Miyako's, our hibachi spot, and we was talking about how, even from a Christian standpoint, we become to categorize everything, like, and even in society, like, everything, like, this sin is greater than that sin. That sin is greater than this charge is greater than that. And in God's sight, like, sin is sin. Right is right, absolutely. And wrong is wrong. And even when we talk about our Haitian brothers and sisters, right? How, like, again, go back to that perspective that, would I want to see my mom out there being harassed like they are? Would I want to see my brother out there being harassed like they are? Would I want to see my grandmother, if she was still alive, out there being harassed? No, there's nothing about that that's okay. Like, there's ways that we can enforce immigration laws. There's ways we can tighten up immigration laws. There's ways we can make immigration better. But it doesn't mean that we have to lose who we are in our character in the process. In America's character is supposed to be a land of immigrants, a place where people can dream big and come here and accomplish those dreams.
Right.
Is that the image that we're showing there? You know what I'm saying? And that. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm on an island by myself right now in this season of my life.
I think one of the things we have to take that needs to be taken into consideration for us all is, yes, we are supposed to be a country of a land of opportunity for anyone who comes in outside of the country. Yes, but only within reason.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because because we're dealing with systematic racism, it only applies to a certain group of people. So if you're coming in from outside of the country and you happen to be Caucasian, then yeah, the door's wide open for you. That's what it seems like, because you get those who are coming in from other countries, people of color, and there's a lot of mistreatment for them to come in.
Right.
And now don't get me wrong, because you get political asylum from European countries without ease, without it being any kind of issue or lashback. However, getting political asylum from a country where the people are brown, there just seems to be a little more
hoops they have to jump back through. Yeah,
and more hoops that you have to jump through. Now, again, we are talking about systematic, and then applying that. And I said it last week. This thing still needs to be applied fairly across the board. Unfortunately, fair looks different from our eyes compared to those who are in control. And until that actually takes place, we're going to continue to see the kind of stuff we've been seeing. People put in cages and locked away and separated from their families. People ran down and chased down by horses and whatnot. So these are the kind of things we're going to continue to see. But it's all policy. And even if the policy is, it still has to be interpreted the same way,
right?
And then applied the same way. And until that happens, man, I mean, that's what we're really talking about here, because everything else, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to roll it down a smooth road.
Yeah, and maybe
And if that means we got to get out and vote and change lawmakers and policymakers, then that's what we need to do.
We will be out doing this weekend.
Absolutely.
People to vote.
And so make sure that you are registered vote. Go and double check. Maybe you moved across town or across the state or whatever, but make sure that you've done everything in your power to make sure that you are registered to vote. So, because this particular election, because it is a midterm election, is probably the most important one.
Yeah.
And because this is when you're going to get your state representatives, your senators, governors, all of them are going to be
a lot of places. Places.
County and state officials are going to be put on notice, and this is your opportunity to make those necessary changes. But to do that, you have got to be registered to vote.
And then once you register, educate yourself on who's running.
That is correct. Make sure you educate yourself on the topics at hand, so you can be an informed voter. Go to the city hall, town hall meetings that are in your neighborhood, in your district. If it happens to be, hey, look, you might have to make a sacrifice for that evening and not go to Bible study. Maybe you have to make a sacrifice and not go take the kids to football practice or make some sort of arrangement, cheerleading, that kind of thing. But maybe you have to make those kind of sacrifices, because if you don't today, you're going to end up with some laws or some people who are not in your favor, in your neighborhood, in your community, in your city, in your state. or your county or your state. So so you have to make sure that you do your part, and every single vote counts.
Absolutely.
So if you're sitting there, if you're one of those people who say, "Oh, my voice, and my vote does not count," I disagree with you. But it only begins with you doing your part in making sure that you are registered to vote, and it doesn't matter what part of the state or city you happen to live in. You need to make them necessary changes. And if you don't know, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. What is it? The My Vote SOS.
It's in Georgia. Yeah, it's
for Georgia.
mvp.sos.ga.gov.
That's correct. And make sure you go in there and double check. And because you might still be registered to vote in the county you just moved out of 3 months ago, and you thought maybe because you put in a change of address that it automatically changed your your voter registration, and that may not be the case. So you need to double check. Make sure you do all the things necessary that you can vote. And you have how much time do we have left now?
Everything
needs to be done
Monday
by
to register
till Monday,
to vote,
which is the 4th.
Yeah.
So
October
it has
4th.
to be done by October 4th. So
and that's in the state of Georgia. If
that's
in the state of Georgia.
That is the state of Georgia. So make sure you get that done by the end of this week, ladies and gentlemen.
But moving on from that, I wanted to bring this up too, really briefly. So, talking about just knowing who you have in places of power and position. There's a video that came out recently of a black man in Missouri who had been arrested, had been handcuffed, and the police officers allowed their dogs to kind of to bite him and attack him. I think we got the video, Disco. I think he's coming up with it now, but I want to show this video first before we talk about it.
Putting that dog on him. I know he ain't sticking that dog on him before it's that baby. Wow. Don't stick that dog on him. Don't do that. I know he can't do that. He stick the dog on him. God damn.
I'm recording it.
That's like a dog. Lord have mercy. That's sad.
You heard?
Oh my God. Are you serious? You let the dog bite him.
Just bite him.
Oh my God. You let him bite him. Girl, girl. Record that.
I am.
Girl, look at him. They still let him bite him all that time. Girl, that's why I hate these
So that video, like, I heard about this story. I have never watched the video. I've seen the pictures of it, and even now, like, that's so raw. That's so raw. Because you do see in part of the video where the guy, at one point he wasn't handcuffed, but even at the point where he's handcuffed, the dog is still attacking him, and the police is just standing like it's okay. And I know for a fact, because my last job, they used to bring dogs in there sometimes to train them in the warehouse that we had. And I know for a fact that most of these dogs, they teach them in other languages how to sick and how to not sick. And
German being the main one.
German being the main language. But I'm just saying, like, when is enough enough? I mean, you can't.
Yeah, I'm chewing on my tongue over here because I'm looking at that. There was absolutely no need for that. They actually he wasn't handcuffed when he was up against the car, but they had enough that they could have applied some pressure on him, grabbed his arms. And
at one point, they had the leg in his back. Why the
Well,
dog
that
was
was
attacking
when he
him.
was on the ground, but I saw that when he was leaned up against the car, even when the dog was attacking him, he didn't move from there. He might have got moved from side to side, but his body was still draped over the car. They could have handcuffed him then. And that didn't make any sense. Now you mean to tell me that one dude is strong enough to outpower
3 dudes in the dog.
three? Well, I'm just gonna say the 2 officers with weapons that you couldn't put him in handcuffs. So just how? Ooh, I almost said it, but I'm gonna say it. Just how cowardly are you? If you're a police officer and you can't now people are gonna say maybe he was on drugs, maybe he had took some, made him superhuman, whatever. Okay, let's just face it. The truth of the matter is, you had an opportunity to put handcuffs on the man. You didn't, and instead you allowed the dog to get in on the action. Okay, and be able to bite him. And then while he was still being bit, you still didn't try to put handcuffs on him.
And the thing,
you
but
put
this
him
is
on the ground. You put the man's on the ground. You still don't take the dog off, but you have your knees in his back, and still don't handcuff him. And even when you do get the handcuffs on him, you still let the dog get at him.
And my thing
that
is
doesn't make any sense to me.
From an organizational standpoint, I have been very much in the side of hearing the side of law enforcement on issues like this, right? I think I've had more meetings than most people would prefer me to have with people from law enforcement community, and I try to be extremely fair. But this doesn't do anything to justify the point. We have so many different options out here. They have tasers, they have mace, they have other different options, and it's like, for me, again, it goes back to the whole thing about, a lot of people are going to say, well, here goes the black on black. Here's the black people crying up again. But for me, for a moment, we can't even watch, like, other parts of America can't even deal with the reality of their children being pushed by African American, okay? All right. Without being uproar about what's going on. How can you see this and think there's something okay with this? Or to think that, this is how we would treat people. And irregardless whether they're American, we shouldn't treat anybody like that. You know what I'm saying? Period. We shouldn't treat anybody like that. I don't care whether you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. This video, I listen. It comes to a point where I don't have any words, and very rarely do I not have any words. I'm more so like emotionally. That's crazy. That's all I can say. Like that. That makes no sense. So. This is something that we're going to stay on, and we're going to actually reach out to the brother's attorney who was here and see if we can get him on the podcast, Ben Crump, because this is something that continues to happen. And I think that we have to be real enough to say that police need to get home safely at the end of the night, but this guy was not a threat to anybody at any point. And I hope justice is done, and I hope that it's equal and fair justice. Not that thing we call not the balance we call justice currently. Yeah. So, but yeah, we'll pick up on this again. Another day. But I do want to continue to remind people that we have our bingo night coming up October 9th, and it'll be held at what's the name of the center we're doing it at? The little 5 Points.
Yeah, Little 5 Points
Community Center. There we go. Sorry, the Little 5 Points Community Center. So we'll be hosting that next week on the 9th, and then exactly 2 weeks after that, we'll be hosting our second One Accord Conference, which I am super excited about. We have great speakers. We have Gerald Griggs, who's going to be there. We have I can't even think of some of the names right now. So many people. Reverend Timothy McDonald, former Dolphins player Jason Allen. So many great people who are going to be. Pastor Lisa Musser from Tabernacle International Church. We have representatives from Paulding and Cobb County who will be out as well. So super excited about that. That's coming up. And I think you're going to be booked to host it again, James. So be ready. And I'm super excited about that. So please join us for that. And remember, you can go on our website, make a donation at www.blackpush.org. And also, too, I think this week we're going to focus on Newbie Corp. I want to do a whole segment on Newbie Corp maybe Friday, so we can kind of talk to people about Newbie Corp and what it is that Newbie Corp does. So I think we'll have that more defined by the Friday anyway. So
Yes.
thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Thank you for watching.
tuning
Join us tomorrow at 1 o'clock. We'll be on exactly at 1 o'clock because we'll be on with Carol Massey tomorrow at 1. So join us tomorrow at 1 as we talk to Carol Massey, and she's an awesome woman. So it'll be very interesting to see. And one piece of advice I'll leave everybody is try to look at people's situations from their view. Try once. And I think that it changed the way we look at life and changed the way we look at people. Until next time, have